made my home there. You know, my family lives there. You know, I'm forever going to be there. But, you know, I know for sure I'm not going to win a Super Bowl there. So, yeah. We here.
He knew what he was saying. Those comments didn't go over well with still a Cowboy, Micah Parsons, who responded on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. He said, "This is what rejection and envy look like. This is some clown stuff." Lawrence goes back at him on X and says, "Calling me a clown won't change the fact that I told the truth. Maybe if you spent less time tweeting and more time winning, I wouldn't have left." And I think he had like an emoji in there. I'm not sure. Jason, what's your reaction to that exchange between Parsons and Lawrence?
Well, the part I love about Tank Lawrence, when he says it, the Seattle Seahawks, the reporter there, he had no expectation for that. He thought this was a friendly welcome to the team. It was just like, oh, wow, we just went viral. I look at this, and what Tank Lawrence is saying is what we've all said for the past however many years. Not only is it Micah Parsons, in his opinion, but the entire Dallas Cowboys organization isn't pushing forward to win Super Bowls. It's about everything else other than winning and putting that type of product on the football field. And sometimes it takes leaving to be able to say those things. And I think for Cowboys fans, they love the fact that Micah Parsons goes right back at him and he's representing his team. But the truth of the matter is, how are you guys moving forward to try to win a championship? There's reports now about Cooper Kupp. They signed Miles Sanders. But we've seen for the past 2 years them not make a ton of moves in free agency, and the product on the field has not improved.
Yeah, time is wasted on the young. And I think Michael Parsons doesn't understand that one day he is going to be Lawrence, and he's going to be in those shoes. And a lot of guys have walked through those doors, and yet they haven't, been able to get to the promised land since, the big three. So I think right now, you talk about going back and forth, and maybe it's some contention, but maybe Lawrence is speaking for other people within that locker room. I think that maybe it's some people within that building that believes the same thing. And just because you're the best player doesn't mean that you're best suited to lead this franchise. And right now, Michael Parsons is going to be the biggest voice within that locker room. Is that the type of leadership that you want going forward? That's something that you have to ask yourself before you give him, $50 million, $40 million a year.
Bart, who was the Jets teammate that you were most likely to squabble with, and why was it Kevin Mawai?
Oh, no, I'm ready for all the smoke. You know what I mean? Listen, I'm the can man. Anybody can get it.
And same question for Jason McCourty. Who was the teammate you were most likely to scrap with, and why was it, in your words, Derrick Henry? That's weird.
It was. Oh, no, I don't want no smoke with Derrick Henry. Bart's saying anybody. When you look at the size difference, 6'4", 250, I played alongside my brother. I couldn't stand him in New England.
There you go. All right, the McCourty brothers. That thing goes back a few years probably. Jason McCourty and Bart Scott. Appreciate it. Thank you.
No. Thank you. You did. Thank you, Jay. Now I have and my kids better damn sure not be kissing in my basement. But the movie theater, like you can afford a movie theater ticket and you go see something midday in the summer, a movie that nobody's going to be watching. Go ahead and throw that arm around the chair.
See, I think you guys are looking at me.
Magic happen. Let's go.
It's dark in there, no parents.
I think it's basement, and you're looking at me as if I had a basement. I did not have a basement growing up, believe it or not. I know that surprises you, but I did not have the basement growing up.
But you had friends that had the basement.
You play road games.
Okay.
You have some good road games.
What J-Mac and I are saying is we didn't have basements, nor did we have friends that had basements.
And we're just trying to get to see. If you're trying to go to the basement, we're trying to get to second base. We're just trying to get to kiss. You want your own private room.
Very aggressive, exactly.
Hold on, Jason. We need to get your opinion on this too. Evan said that sometimes if you did go to the movies and you were nervous, perhaps that there was a buffer seat in between you and the person that you went to the movie with, and then you eventually slide in. What do you think of that approach?
Like a seat in between?
Okay, this was more figurative than literal. I'm saying I was such a nervous. No, in this sit-up, it would be way more closer to Chris and Michelle. But I'm saying I was such a nervous wreck that I would be too scared to sit near the girl. That's what I'm saying, figuratively more than literally.
Okay,
that's not
have
surprising
you. Sweaty palms.
Oh,
and like...
knees weak, palms are sweaty. That's what I had.
Vomit on your sweater already?
Yeah. Mom's spaghetti. Okay.
We got to move on.
Speaking of vomiting.
What are we vomiting?
The Dallas Cowboys on social media.
All right. So there's two Cowboy stories. Yes. Okay. Yeah. We can choose your own adventure. Let's start with the breaking.
You don't want to talk Miles Sanders? There's 3 stories.
Oh, Miles Sanders. Okay. Miles Sanders. Yeah. Winning the Super Bowl because of that. Cooper Kupp, Cowboys. Is it a good fit before we get to Lawrence and Micah?
Yes, I think it is a good fit.
That happens.
You get somebody alongside CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott's one of his best years was when he had Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb on the outside. You had 2 guys. Now the question is, all right, Cooper Kupp, we see him and you hear the name and you're thinking,
Cooper Cup, Triple Crown, Super Bowl MVP type of player, is he still somewhere around that level to be able to come help this team get to that next step? I think the other side of it is, CC was just mentioning, you talk about what just transpired on social media between DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. You bring a guy like Cooper Kupp, who's a Super Bowl winner, who knows what it takes, who was around Matthew Stafford, who was around an organization and a head coach in Sean McVay and got to see it every single day. You're also bringing in a leader in your locker room that can help set the tone for this team moving forward.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask you about, the leadership, the culture around the Dallas Cowboys, because Tank Lawrence was one of the longest tenured Dallas Cowboys, and now he's no longer there. And what makes it look bad is this public spat that he has yesterday with Micah Parsons after Tank says, even though Dallas is home, there was no way I was going to win a championship there. What did you make of that public spat between those two players and the implications of what that means for that locker room moving forward?
I think for Tank, like, is Seattle winning the Super Bowl this year? Probably not. I think what he was saying was, as a member of the Dallas Cowboys, were we not only were we not close to winning a Super Bowl, year in and year out, we weren't trying to. We didn't have probably the management at the top that was trying to get to a Super Bowl, bringing in the right players, and then below, within the locker room. And you saw later on, he pointed out to Micah specifically, we didn't have players with their focus of trying to win a Super Bowl. And I think sometimes we look at a locker room, especially a position group, and you assume that it's a brotherhood and everybody gets along, and that's not always the case. So I think for Tank Lawrence, you're looking at it, and even for Micah Parsons, there was always probably some type of tension between those two guys. And from a guy that played for a long time, you get to a point in the locker room where you're looking around and you're like, damn, I don't know where I am anymore, because there's a new age of players, and you're sitting there saying, back in my day, I think for Tank Lawrence, he said, I've been here for a long time. We ain't won nothing. And now I'm watching you, and you're probably a younger version of me that thought I had all the time in the world and that this team was going to turn the corner. And if you don't change and lead in a different way and do things differently, you're going to be in the same position.
And Jason, speaking of culture and what it takes to win, even though Aaron Rodgers has won a Super Bowl and he's won 4 MVPs, we haven't seen that version of him in quite some time. And for a guy who always puts himself in the spotlight, and that's his right, but who missed mandatory football activities to go on a trip, these are things that pile up when we talk about culture. So are you surprised that two organizations that pride themselves on culture, like the Pittsburgh Steelers and maybe the Minnesota Vikings, would want to bring him in?
It almost just speaks to your own reality right now. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, for the Giants, you look around and it's just like, all right, if we don't get Rodgers, the alternative is Joe Flacco. We're bringing Russell Wilson. For the Steelers, they're like, well, we just did that. That only worked to a certain extent. Why should we not roll the dice and see what Rodgers brings to the table? So I think they're in the position right now where they're not close enough, especially the Steelers, to go up and get a quarterback. So it's like, if we don't get Rodgers, then what's next? And you wait on Rodgers, because I don't think it's not pertinent that you're signing anybody else that's available. Those guys really aren't going anywhere. So if you miss on Rodgers, you're basically just closing your eyes, putting your hand down there, picking somebody up and saying, hey, let's roll with him, you know?
You believe that about the Steelers, too? Because, I mean, the Browns had Russ there yesterday. If the Browns were to make a move and sign Russ, and Rodgers either picks the Vikings, or the Vikings pick Rodgers, or Rodgers picks the Giants.